Always fresh, always fair. The Guy Benson Show.
It's the Guy Benson Show. Appreciate you being here with us. GuyBensonShow.com is our website. Podcast always free. So we've talked a bit about the Epstein controversy for years. Also recently, for obvious reasons, we've mentioned it with guests. I've given some of my thoughts. I have not gotten your thoughts. I have not taken the temperature of this audience yet based on these updates, but the president of the United States keeps being asked about it, and therefore he keeps talking about it. Democrats are now suddenly very hot to talk about it. The media is out there hyping it, questions for him all the time, etc. Where does this story rank in your mind? Is this a priority? Do you care? Are you upset with the way this has been handled? We're being told that a lot of Trump's base is very, very angry with him about that. Is that true? At least in your experience. Call us. Let us know how you're feeling about this. 833-456-1300. And the lines are jammed. Let's start in Virginia with Laura. Laura, welcome to the show.
How you doing? I hope you're doing okay.
Same, yes. All right, so how do you feel about this?
Well, I'm a supporter of Trump most of the time, as I am with, most good policies. But I'm a bit skeptical simply because he hasn't followed through, and he always follows through with most anything else he's done.
So you think
it makes you feel weird.
You feel like maybe there could be smoke and fire here potentially?
I feel like more than potentially, just simply because it's not talked about and it's just wondered about,
All right, fair enough. And I think there are plenty of people who fall into that camp, like you, Laura. In Virginia, thanks for the call, getting us started. 833-456-1300. 833-456-1300. Jenny calling from Santa Rosa, California, listening on KSRO. So glad you're here.
Thank you. For me, personally, it is definitely not. It's not a priority. I think the media just seems like they're distracting from all of Trump's great accomplishments, the tariffs, the great job he's done at the border, et cetera. I mean, I feel like he'll bring it up, in his good time, and he's got his reasons. I trust whatever the holdup may be regarding this, but it's definitely, I'm not affected by this.
Okay. Thanks, Jenny. Appreciate the phone call. 833-456-1300. So one person's kind of skeptical of Trump on this. A next caller, trust Trump, not a priority. 833-456-1300. 833-456-1300. Let's go to WLS land, Chicago, Illinois. Hi, Mike.
Hi. Look, I think Trump has got an administrative agenda. He's on a roll. He's getting things done. He's dismantling all this leftism. And consider the source, the media, the Democrats. What is their background? I think their mendacity has proved itself over and over again, and they're trying to hide their own venality.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and thanks for the call, Mike, I think the point about the dishonesty from the left is a fair one. I also think the point of the cynicism, right? They didn't care about the story almost at all until they got the sense that maybe this could cause a political problem for Trump, specifically within his own base. And all of a sudden they're like, oh, look at this shiny object. Oh, we've got to get to the bottom of it. To me, it's very transparently political, the game that they're playing. But that doesn't necessarily mean that people's curiosities or frustrations are satisfied. Just because the Democrats are being cynical isn't unto itself an argument on the substance. So that's part of the reason I wanted to take your calls on this and get a sense of how you're feeling. At 833-456-1300, toll-free connection here at the Guy Benson Show as we take your calls. Let's go out to the Pacific Northwest. And David, who's calling from Seattle and KTTH. Hi, David. Welcome.
Hey, Guy. Thanks. Love your show.
Thank you.
I could care less, and I agree. You just hit the nail on the head. It's a political witch hunt. This is what Trump means by it's a hoax, because they're perpetrating, what we don't know, or what the object of us not knowing exactly what is in all the files, hundreds of thousands of them, and using fear to try to, fracture the Republican Party. It's not going to happen. If you want to look at two simple things that we can know that are facts for sure, Donald Trump threw Epstein out for taking spa girls, for hiring spa girls. And so he protected workers by doing that.
He threw Epstein out of Mar-a-Lago years ago is what you're talking about.
Years ago.
Yeah.
And so Trump, in a real way, protected women workers that worked for him because more didn't go to Epstein. If Epstein had a real cushy relationship with Trump, he wouldn't have stopped him from doing that. He would have let him, go as far as taking a picture of him in a dress with heels. And I mean, there's the political bias. They had Jeffrey Epstein alive and before he went to jail, and they could have asked him anything. They could have put him to Congress. Why is the presidents going to this island? Why are all these things happening? But they didn't, because they have very real reasons. One, to have shut Jeffrey Epstein up.
As we've been reporting from the moment we came on the air, Charlie Kirk, who is the founder of Turning Point USA, a man in his 30s, a young husband and father of two, has been shot in the neck at an event in Utah Valley University. Witnesses, including our colleague Jason Chaffetz, saying that it was one shot, appears to be a sniper situation, and at least an attempted assassination. That's what this looks like. Now, we had reported several times that there is a suspect in custody, and we even described him because there were images of this person, and the university had put out an official statement saying that the suspect was in custody. Then minutes ago, that all changed. Apparently, those were incorrect reports, and the school had put out a statement that was not confirmed, and now officials are saying the suspect is not in custody. So whoever shot Charlie Kirk earlier this afternoon is evidently still at large. Joining us now is Martha McCallum. She's the anchor of The Story on Fox News Channel. She just got off the air a few minutes ago, a co-anchor of Fox News Politics. Martha, it's always good to have you here. These are extremely upsetting circumstances. We don't have a lot of reliable information. We have lots of rumors. We have lots of speculation. We even had an official report now rescinded about the suspect, and it's really difficult to find the words in moments like this.
Yeah. Well, Guy, thank you for having me. It is a terrible, terrible afternoon and just an awful story to have to cover. And our understanding is that he is in critical condition, and I think that is a moment for everyone to pray for him, regardless of your political backgrounds. This is a young man who has really brought a lot of joy and a lot of insight to a lot of young people, and has engaged them in the political process in a way that they were not engaged before. And I look at this video of him getting up to speak today at one of his Prove Me Wrong, which are always, entertaining and interesting events on college campuses. Huge smile on his face. He's throwing hats to the crowd. He's a young father. He's someone that we all really need to pray for today, and just hope for a miracle and hope for him to pull through. And I think that that's where we are. And as you mentioned, the suspect, and I said on our program, The Story, just moments ago when we started, they had a suspect in custody. And I think that's important to point out in these fast-moving stories. A suspect does not mean it is the person. And then it was interesting because we had a witness who was, very emotionally talking to a local reporter on the ground and named the person, said it's, he's a little off, he's a little nutty, but it wasn't him. I don't think he did it. And lo and behold, moments later, we heard that the report that they said that they do not have the suspect in custody. So he's still out there somewhere, as you said, Guy.
Yeah, I'm kind of astonished that the school put that out there. And of course, suspect inherently is talking about someone who is suspected of something, not confirmed. But evidently, they've now decided the person that they had put into custody they've determined, and we don't know exactly how or why, did not pull the trigger here, which then Martha, it's another extremely concerning angle to this in terms of public safety right now. There's a very dangerous would-be assassin or attempted murderer armed on the loose in or around that campus area right now. I mean, that is an active part of this story as well.
Yeah, it sure is, Guy. And I'm looking at this live shot on one of the other networks of a bunch of SWAT team agents surrounding a building. It looks like it's a campus building. There's a tennis court right nearby. Mm-hmm. So these law enforcement in Orem, Utah is dealing with an incredibly intense situation right now. They need to find out who the shooter was. The other thing that it looked like the guy that they took down, it was hard to tell whether he was on the lower part of that area where Jason Chaffetz felt that the shot came from the front of where he was speaking, lower and closer in. And then the university said that they believed it was coming from a couple hundred yards away.
Right, 200 yards away in a building.
We took one into custody. Yeah, I mean, it's such a close area, and he was down low and under a tent. It's a very, I'm not someone who's very familiar with guns, but Jason Chaffetz is, and he said it's just a very difficult to imagine that someone high up could have gotten that shot from where they were, given that this is an amphitheater situation. It goes down into a central point, and he was under a tent. But anyway, the most important thing is, that we're just praying that he can recover and go home to his wife and his children.
You mentioned that there are these overhead images where it looks like at least staging of law enforcement at or near a building, and you just have no idea. Like, could there be intelligence that there's a suspect holed up somewhere and they have to go sweep or clear a building, or are they just, guessing and going building to building? Could this person be, in a getaway car somewhere? We have no idea. That's one angle to this, so the law enforcement side and the active public safety threat that seems to still be in place on this campus at Utah Valley University. And then you have the personal side of this, Martha. I think many, many, many of us here at Fox know Charlie to some extent. He's been on our air many times. I've known him going way back to the very beginning of both of our careers in Chicago in 2009, 2010. I mean, way back. And you look at now, he's a young man with a wife. He has 2 young kids, and you see the reports that he's been shot in the neck, and you just pray that the worst does not come to pass and the people who are working to save his life are successful. And you have just, I can't imagine what is happening in his household with his family, his extended family, his friends, all of that. And then you zoom out, from the individual to the country, Martha. And I mean, I'm sure your phone's blowing up the way mine is. There's so many people just saying there's something really wrong and broken in our country right now, and it's hard to argue with that.
The past 2 days we spent covering this brutal murder of this young woman from Ukraine on a light rail train on her way home from her job at a pizza place in Charlotte, North Carolina. And we watched the U.S. attorney in charge of that investigation. Yes.
Martha, I just have to jump in here. We're now seeing a message from President Trump that Charlie is gone. That, according to President Trump on Truth Social moments ago, I was just informed that the president put that out there. And we cannot independently confirm that. Let me just say that. But now the President of the United States has put that out there, Martha. So I wanted to let our audience know that he says the great and even legendary Charlie Kirk is dead. That's the first sentence of this message on Truth Social moments ago from President Trump. Martha, that is brutal.
It is absolutely heartbreaking. And, President Trump, we know that they have all been in the Situation Room. I was supposed to have Vice President Vance on my show tomorrow, and he canceled moments ago, and it may be because they were getting ready to report this. He's very close to Charlie Kirk. The Trump family is very close to Charlie Kirk. I'm looking at all the different screens and waiting for this to drop on our air as well. But as you say, this from President Trump, the great and even legendary Charlie Kirk is dead. No one understood or had the heart of the youth in the United States of America better than Charlie. He was loved and admired by all, especially me. And now he is no longer with us, Melania, and my sympathies go out to his beautiful wife, Erica, and family. Charlie, we love you, is the message from President Trump. And now we see that it's crossing on a number of networks that Charlie Kirk did not survive this shooting today at Utah Valley University, where he was speaking to students. He was jubilant. He was smiling as he took the stage. And this is just an absolute loss and tragedy.
And it came to me last night. I wrote a piece about it. It's at townhall.com today. I am not convinced that this was done deliberately or strategically. That being said, it kind of feels like Democrats and their allies in the news media have walked into a trap, a political trap, when it comes to this so-called Maryland father down in El Salvador, because I've made my point on the legal side of this. I won't go down and beat the drum on that again here. But from a political perspective, it's almost like the Trump administration waited for days to let all of them stake out the most extreme positions possible in favor of this man. Van Hollen goes down there, fact-finding, solidarity, all of that. The media focusing on this, a fixation on this story and this man, the way that they refer to him as like this innocent dad who was just shipped off to the gulag, and the whole thing is deeply, deeply wrong. And look at what the Trump administration has done. And then in the last 24 to 48 hours, Charlie, we've gotten the evidence about the spousal abuse, the increased evidence and specifics about MS-13 ties, which was adjudicated multiple times by judges. Now this investigation about human trafficking allegations, the arrest with the drugs. I mean, I just listed 4 strikes on top of being an illegal immigrant, 5 strikes. Is this the guy they've really rallied around? I guess so.
Yeah, it's almost like they maybe had some inkling that some of these other things were going to come out, and they didn't just discover them in the past 48 hours. Look, the greatest political jujitsu there is to get your opponent to defend the indefensible, and that's what they've managed to do with Democrats on all of this. They are trying to defend the indefensible, and what's great about it, what I love about it, is it's not just sort of smoke and mirrors and jujitsu. It's actually going to the very heart of their political positions, their political, their political beliefs, as compared to the political beliefs of Donald Trump and the Republican and today's Republican Party, which is, we had that entire election. The number one issue was arguably illegal immigration, and so it's not just a bad look for them. It's actually the fullest extreme of what their positions are, and so when you can put that in stark relief, in politics, you're winning.
And the thing is, Charlie, and I made this point at the top of the show as well, I believe that because of their error, the Trump administration's error, they should bring the guy back briefly and then deport him somewhere else. That's what I think should happen here based on the law. That being said, it is just galling to see all these people who had absolutely no regard at all for the rule of law when it came to 10 million illegal border crossings. All of a sudden, they are sticklers, Charlie. When it comes to immigration and when it comes to the letter of the law, it is sacred, and shame on anyone who does not follow the exact specifics of the law. And then the giant asterisk here is everything from the border crisis that they either collaborated on or excused or ignored. It is very hard to take them seriously, Charlie.
Yeah, it is kind of remarkable when you look at the list of victims of open borders over the past couple of years, and we talk about them a lot, obviously, because we should. And if
no one else does,
and if the rest of the media weren't so deeply invested in telling their distorted, twisted version of events in order to make Trump look like the worst villain and to make Joe Biden or whoever look like some second coming. If it weren't for all of that, it is remarkable to think about that. That they finally have found a victim in all this, and it's an MS-13 gangbanger who was accused by his own wife of beating her. And apparently has been investigated for human smuggling. It really is kind of galling, and I have to say that that press conference at the White House earlier this week, where you had Rachel Morin's mother speaking to the press, was one of the most extraordinary things I think I have ever seen play out in the White House press briefing room. And at the end of it, to me, the most remarkable thing about all of it was at the end of it, and she was lecturing the very reporters sitting in those seats. And she was talking about the fact that they were not telling, they were telling a version of the truth maybe, but they were not telling the important version of the truth or the truest version of the truth. And at the end of it, you could hear a pin drop and to listen. And then, of course, you started to hear off camera all of these apologies from the press. That was just an extraordinary moment and a deserving moment for the press, if you ask me.
We played the entire thing, 8 minutes, on this show because she deserves to be heard. We mentioned a few times that the Media Research Center looked into this, ABC, NBC, CBS, their combined news coverage of the Maryland father, something like 64 minutes so far on their broadcast network news shows, 0 minutes and 0 seconds on the Rachel Morin murder trial.
Serious question.
And the details are horrific.
How twisted of a mind must you have when it comes to news judgment that you look at those two stories and you see all the value of one and none of the value of the other? I can't even wrap my brain around how far removed you have to be from like the news process, from the public safety process, from the politics.
Charlie, it's just they understand that their tribe is basically more or less in favor of illegal immigration.
Yep.
And negative stories about the consequences of their tribe's policies are bad and should be covered up and ignored. And to the extent that they want to talk at all about illegal immigration, they want to agitate basically on behalf of illegal immigrants to prevent as many deportations as possible. I think that is what is motivating a lot of this, because journalists, many of them represent the activist wing of the Democratic Party who pressure from the left the politicians of their party. And that's what we see here, but it also creates these horrible blind spots and these examples of moral idiocy that turns so many people off that the result ends up being, I don't know, the election of Donald Trump as president of the United States again.
Yeah, no, it's
and so go ahead.
It's total cowardice. But one thing that I think is kind of interesting, and I don't give Nancy Pelosi much credit for much, but one thing that she and because ultimately, I guess you could argue that she ultimately failed, but there was a time when she put up a good fight trying to keep her party from going way wacko leftist crazy, where she tried to kind of keep it away from the AOC Bernie Sanders drift. And she did it very effectively for some period of time. And then, of course, eventually the inmates took over the asylum, and they are where they are now.
And she left leadership.
But yeah, but although I do think it kind of began probably while she was still in leadership. But
well, remember when they were going to do an anti-Semitism vote to condemn it, right? A resolution condemning anti-Semitism because of something horrible either Ilhan Omar or Rashida Tlaib had said.
Yeah.
And the inmates running the asylum said, nope, we can't do that. We have to do an all bigotry matters watering down, and Pelosi went along with it. That was a pretty bad warning sign along the path.
And quite frankly, once the light goes out on her and she leaves Congress altogether, I really do think that it's going to go to a very, very dark place.
Promptly at 6 Eastern, I will be once again co-hosting The Bottom Line on Fox Business Network. I did so yesterday, doing so tonight, and again tomorrow with my dear friend and colleague twice over, Katie Pavlich from townhall.com and Fox News. She joins me here in studio. It's
Hello.
Great to see you again.
Great to see you again. I think I've seen you more in the last 2 days than seen you all year, which is
it's been a lot.
Which is good. I'm liking this.
In the best possible way. By the way, I have to tell folks about this, and I want to compliment you. So a little look behind the scenes. So last night, I'm sitting next to her at the anchor desk. We're in the opening segment of the show, and I am watching, and I start to get really nervous because she is right on the brink of doing a Ron Burgundy, where she is going to read something on the prompter that she's not supposed to read. And the way that you realized it and pulled out of it was like,
it's pretty clutch.
That is a seasoned broadcast professional right there.
Thank you very much. I hope nobody watching noticed that.
There's no chance they knew.
Yeah. Okay,
I'm sort of telling on you, but it's in a complimentary way.
Okay. You know what? I have to tell a story before we get into the topics about you now.
Uh-oh. Okay.
This was many, many years ago. I was on my way to Las Vegas. I was driving, and I was doing a radio interview with you when you were in a different show. And I was driving to Vegas for a conference, and I was on the phone with you, and I blew a tire in the middle of the interview.
Mid-interview.
And I pulled over off the highway, and I stopped the car, and you never knew that happened.
See, knowing you, though, I almost expected that story to go on. I then changed the tire myself.
No, I called my dad.
During the interview. That is amazing.
Yeah, so pretty good at staying calm. But
that is impressive.
That was a little more intense than yesterday.
Cookie would have driven off the road, thrown her phone in a lake, right? It had just been a total panic, but you kept it together. Very impressive. All right, Katie, something that we did touch on a little bit on The Bottom Line last night, and now there's an update to it. We saw the leader of France announce that they're going to unilaterally start to recognize the state of Palestine, whatever that means. I don't know exactly who they would be interacting with.
Yeah, okay.
Are they going to recognize Hamas? What does that mean? But it's clearly just this sop to a lot of the voters, especially in certain parties in France that are Jew-hating Islamists in many cases. Now the UK saying the same thing. Prime Minister Starmer, just after Trump left, basically saying, we are now in the UK threatening to do the same thing unless Israel meets certain demands, and they're laying out demands about UN aid and a ceasefire. Israel must accept a ceasefire. I'm like,
they have.
Listen, Keir, how many times has Israel said yes? The people who keep saying no, and the people who keep the starvation, such as it exists, going in Gaza would be Hamas, and yet the demands from these people are always made of Israel.
Right.
It's completely backward. It rewards the terrorists and paints Israel into an uncomfortable corner, which seems to be the comfort zone of a lot of these European leaders in particular.
You know, it's amazing how cowardly the West has become. I mean, this is a virtue signaling exercise, obviously. To your point, who you're negotiating with, what does the government look like if you're going to recognize a state at the United Nations, which means absolutely nothing, who is going to be in charge, and you're rewarding one of the worst terrorist attacks that we've seen over the past 50 years, certainly in modern history, as if doing so will somehow save your own populations from this kind of Islamic jihad ideology. And I like the way that President Trump responded to Macron saying it. And he said, well, I don't really care what France thinks, and they're irrelevant, which, thank goodness, this administration knows right from wrong and is saying that these statements
slammed him too.
Are irrelevant, because they are. But, we keep also hearing from folks who it's coming from unexpectedly in some ways, saying, well, Israel's losing the goodwill of the world and they just need to wrap it up. It's been long enough. Okay, well, they're still holding many of their hostages dead and alive. They're holding people's bodies. They're holding people's family members. They're refusing over and over again to accept a ceasefire. They continue to say they will do this again. They will launch additional attacks, that they will never surrender. So what precisely do you expect the Israelis to do? To abandon their people to abandon the hostages that they are keeping. And it seems to me that the UK and France and other Western countries that are pressuring Israel to just do whatever to end it because people are uncomfortable with what's happening, you would just leave your people behind? Is that where we are after they started this war?
The French probably would.
They probably would. So, if you don't want to have a war that extends beyond what you are comfortable with, then maybe don't start one.
Don't start one. And the thing is, a couple reactions to that. It's not just a reward for Hamas and October 7th. It's a reward for Hamas literally a few days ago blowing up the ceasefire negotiations.
Right.
They are holding these hostages that they still refuse to release. They refuse to surrender. They refuse to make reasonable concessions. Israel has made so many concessions.
Thousands of terrorists
They keep saying yes. The Israelis keep saying yes to ceasefire offers. Hamas keeps saying no. Even a lot of these Arab states seem to understand this better than the Europeans do.
Yeah, no, they certainly do. They absolutely do.